But in the retreat for say, I'm going to do like a 1-day immersion MTT. So it's just going to be 1 day, and you're going to learn the tapping sequence that I teach, and how to muscle test yourself, and how to use that to tap into your subconscious so you can figure out what belief system might be there or what stress levels might be there, and then use that technique to clear that. And it works immediately. It's like, it doesn't take weeks or months or years. It's immediate. You do the technique and the stress is gone. So I'm excited to share that with the world.
I want to participate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Abundant Living Ecuador Spotlight Series on health and wellness practitioners here in our local Vilcabamba Valley. And I'm Chiyoko with Abundant Living, and I am honored to be here today with Dr. Teshna. Thank you so much for joining. And I believe this is your second, am I correct, time on the interview series?
Yes.
Last time you were talking with Jesse?
Yes, indeed.
It's been a little while since then.
Yes, a few months. Yes.
Yes. And personally, I loved that video. We had so many people that were really interested in watching what you were sharing about your life in Vilcabamba. And what we're excited to do today is to really focus on Dr. Teshna's work and what your craft, your gift and your talent is that you offer through the practice that you have. And exciting is that Dr. Teshna is part of our health retreat that we're hosting in October of this year. And it is a 14-day retreat down here in Vilcabamba. And we are so fortunate to have a number of the health and wellness practitioners here in Vilcabamba as our partners and collaborators, and I like to say co-hosts of this retreat that we're having. So thank you very much for wanting to participate in that too.
Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't miss it.
I know, amazing. So we have so much to get to today. I'll give a quick reminder, if you want to get updates of when more interviews like this come out, more of our content, make sure you hit the subscribe button to the Abundant Living Ecuador YouTube channel, hit the like button on this video, and don't forget to hit the little bell as well. So all of that said, Dr. Teshna, I'd love to give a little introduction of you and overview of one, what your practice is, what your training is, and then also I'll just very briefly highlight what you will be participating and doing with us in the retreat for October, if that sounds good.
Sure.
All right, amazing. So, Dr. Teshna, I know you teach internationally online and also host in-person trainings. And the trainings are called Metamorphosis with Meridian Therapy and Tapping. And we've talked about this in person, and I'm really excited for you to describe it in your own words, what this methodology is that I'll call, because it's quite powerful. And those of you who are into the quantum science, it's quite fascinating of what you're able to do, which I've witnessed firsthand and experienced in sessions with you.
Yes.
So your private practice, again, it's both online trainings, which is international, and then here in person in Vilcabamba, where you see people one-on-one. And you're a licensed doctor of chiropractic and a certified practitioner in quantum neurology and neuro-emotional technique. And I will say all of this, again, leading to how you have this masterful ability to shift energy in people. I know you say this, and I can, again, totally attest to this from my personal experience. Getting to the root of the core problem, or what I might say, what is the story? What's going on underneath? You know, and even if a person's subconscious is kind of holding that locked in, I think you have a real gift to help people unlock the story. And that root cause is often the underlying pinning that then helps release many, many things. So we'll talk a lot about that. Yes. You've been practicing your craft for almost 4 decades. And I want to just be clear that you are the founder of this Metamorphosis with Meridian Therapy and Tapping, and also the international workshops. And this is MTT for short. So you're the creator, the founder of this for many decades. And I'll give another little teaser. We're also going to speak about some very interesting, well-known people, famous, who have really enjoyed and resonated with your work too. So we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. That's to come. These stories are super fun. We end up talking for ages. Yes. Super fun. And you've been, is this right, about 3 years now in Vilcabamba?
Yes.
Okay, with your wonderful husband, yeah?
Yes, exactly. December of 2020.
December 2020, okay, when the world was going through a radical shift. And you spoke about this in your previous video, which we'll put a link to that down below. In this video is a link to Dr. Teshna's original interview with Abundant Living, but there was some real, I think, manifestation, and I call it magic that you were having come in to get you here.
A lot of
Yeah.
magic. It's when it's meant to be. Things
Exactly.
happen,
Yeah, and going in flow. I think if I can say, and I'm going to get into you describing, your background and your work, but my sense is from knowing you, in our community and spending some time in discussion with you, you really have this natural, maybe it's a commitment to living in flow, and you follow the energy and where it's going. Sometimes people, myself, I find myself in resistance that, it's not working out the way I want it to, and trying to force things. My sense is you don't force things in your life.
Just manifest it.
Yes. I love it. Well, let's jump in. This is a great place to lead into. And wherever feels good for you, maybe you can start by describing in your own words, what is your practice that you offer today? How would you describe that to people?
Mm-hmm. So basically, as she said, I've been doing this type of work since the early 80s. And I learned so many different techniques in the chiropractic world. Like applied kinesiology, for example, in the very beginning of it in 1983, when nobody knew about muscle testing. And I was already learning muscle testing, and I took the whole training and actually became the assistant to that training while I was in chiropractic college, and even became the president of the applied kinesiology club for 3 years out of the 4 years that I was there, teaching other students, how to muscle test and how to use applied kinesiology. And then as part of that, in 1984, there was an International College of Applied Kinesiology conference, and where all the practitioners that did applied kinesiology would get together, and some of us had come up with techniques, and then we would present them to other practitioners. So it just so happened that year, Roger Callahan, who's the father of tapping, presented his idea of using tapping of meridian points to clear emotional stress. That was the first time anyone had ever thought about doing this. And the reason is he was a psychologist. So most of the people who were doing applied kinesiology were chiropractors, because it started with a chiropractor, with Dr. George Goodhart, which I studied with. But Dr. Callahan was a psychologist, so he said, well, how do I apply this to my field? And so he figured out that by tapping certain meridian points, he could help people's emotional state change. And so that was really amazing. And he presented that idea in 1984, and I happened to be there. And so I've been using tapping since 1984.
I'm doing the math real quick. That is
Right.
almost, wait, is that
39 years.
That's almost 40 years.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
wow.
So
Wow.
I'm not new to tapping. And what I did is I took his ideas, and over the years I've changed them and improved them and made it a very simple technique that I can teach to anyone. And then the other thing that happened is in 1987, I also was part of another group of advanced applied kinesiology, which is called Total Body Modification, or TBM for short. And I was part of that group, and again we had an international conference of all the practitioners of TBM, and Scott Walker, who's the father of NET, the neuroemotional technique, happened to present for the very first time his idea of using the spine and meridian points to clear emotions, and with the neuroemotional technique one. So I feel like it's fated, right? It's like I was there the first time Callahan presented the idea. I was there the first time Scott Walker presented the idea. And so I started incorporating these ideas in my techniques. And that's how I came up with the metamorphosis with, Meridian Therapy and Tapping, is using elements of these different techniques plus my own experience and discoveries as I work with people. And so, and I've been teaching that for at least a decade, maybe even almost like 2 decades now. But as I teach it, I also come up with new ideas. So now that it used to be a 2-day training, now it's a 3-day training because I've added so many more things to it. But in the retreat for say, I'm going to do like a 1-day immersion MTT. So it's just going to be 1 day, and you're going to learn the tapping sequence that I teach, and how to muscle test yourself, and how to use that to tap into your subconscious so you can figure out what belief system might be there or what stress levels might be there, and then use that technique to clear that. and it works immediately. It's like, it doesn't take weeks or months or years. It's immediate. You do the technique and the stress is gone. So I'm excited to share that with the world.
I want to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully
I want
you
to.
will be.
And to our audience here who's tracking these different interviews we're doing, this retreat is going to be jam-packed with so many incredible people like yourself offering their, yes, expertise, but I really think it's a gift. Like you said, it was fated.
Yes.
You had something that was pulling you. This is what I meant by you live your life in flow. That's my sense. Those
Yeah,
are my
absolutely.
words. You didn't predict that you were going to be on the innovative cusp of when these now quite famous methodologies that are world renowned, 4 decades later, you didn't know where it was all going, but you were fated to be there, and you're bringing your gift. And yes, and so you said this, and I just want to reiterate for people watching here, when this one-day training immersion that you're doing, the training is for all of the participants to be able to learn it, and then it's self-use, use it on themselves for clearing and healing and continuing their own wellness journey.
Exactly.
I know you also do trainings for other practitioners, right? That they can then use the practice on maybe their patients or clients, folks that they work with. But for people who are attending the retreat who don't work with other people, that's not the point. They're going to be able to do it on themselves.
Exactly.
And I haven't done it to this level. I alluded to when I was introducing you that I have had experience with your craft and your work, and this is through a one-on-one session that I did with Dr. Teshna not that long ago. We'll get further into that, as we speak in this interview. And so I haven't participated in your training yet, but I know people in town who I've met in person, my friends, fellow yogis, etc. And I will say, I can't say for everybody, because I haven't met everyone who's gone through your training, but it's multiple people. They're blown away by it. Teshna's the best. Oh my God, you have to sign up. I don't know when she's going to do it next. Here's her number. Find out when she's going to do it next. You have to do it. And that's kind of, Vilcabamba, we're a very word of mouth town, to say the least.
Yes.
Very word of mouth.
Yes.
And people like to share their experiences. And I've heard so many people profoundly touched by this technique that you teach them and almost amazed of what they're able to do for themselves. Mm-hmm. Yep. So all that said, I'd love for you, maybe you can share a bit about if there's anything to highlight based on these masters who you've trained with, right, and you've studied with continually. Maybe what are some of the things that you've iterated upon to kind of make truly your own with your methodology specifically?
Right. Well, basically, I took elements like muscle testing, okay,
yes.
like the concept of being switched or not being switched.
Can you describe muscle testing for those I'm assuming most people have at least heard of it, some people do it who are watching this,
Yes.
but how would you describe muscle testing to someone who's quite new to that?
Okay, so I can demonstrate muscle testing on myself, and then I'll demonstrate it on you.
Yes.
Okay, so for example, if I was going to muscle test myself, I could use, for example, an arm like this, and then I would push down like this as I'm resisting upward. So I would test like that. So for example, if I say I am a woman and I test, I'm super strong. But if I say I am a man, I can't hold it.
Yeah.
Okay? So basically, when you say something you're incongruent with, your whole entire nervous system kind of like, freaks out, and it inhibits the muscles. So, and it doesn't matter which muscle it is. I could test my fingers, I could test my legs, it doesn't matter which muscle. Yep. If you say something you're incongruent with, for about 15 seconds, the muscles are inhibited. And so it's like a lie detector. Just like when you get hooked up to a lie detector, they can detect if your heart rate is going up, your blood pressure is going up, your pupils are dilating, your sweat rate is increasing. Well, the other thing they don't know is that the muscle becomes inhibited. And so we use that as a tool when we do muscle testing in the applied kinesiology world, right? So if I was going to test Chiyoko here, I'm going to push down this way, you push up, okay? Push up.
Yep.
Good. And she's nice and strong. And instead you say, I am a woman.
I am a woman.
Good. And say, I am a man.
I am a man.
And she immediately cannot hold it, right? It just because it turns off the muscle.
And I'm laughing because in our session, I couldn't believe how well it was working. And I'm quite familiar with kinesiology. I've practiced it myself. I've trained in it. When it gets deeper into the story, the things that you were muscle testing, this was a very simple truth or fact, man or woman, great. Yeah. But man, when you were asking me questions about what my triggers were and some of my traumas were, I was thinking, there's no way you're pushing on my arm as hard as you were before. Not that you would have any reason to do that to me, but it was that powerful. And I'm sharing my one personal experience. It was that stunning to me how my body was just, it was so clear. It was completely strong, and then it was just whoosh down as if I had no muscles. So thank you for describing that. The lie detector is such a great informational piece of why this works. I think some people struggle. It's with, they want to believe it, but they're not sure. Does that really work? And that's a great, example. Everyone is familiar with the lie detector working.
Exactly.
Yes. So please continue. Yes.
Yeah. And so elements like that. So the muscle testing, then the switching. The switching has to do with neurological disorganization that can happen when somebody is stressed or injured. For example, if I take an example of in the wild, if a deer gets hurt on the right front leg, then they would be limping, right? And if they limp, what's going to happen? They're going to become prey, and they're going to be killed, and they're going to be dead. So survival instinct creates a situation where the energy from the left leg that is not injured goes into the right leg that is injured, so that it looks like you're normal. And it will stay like that until that right leg is healed. Once it's healed, the energy rebalances itself, and now you're okay. That's in the animal kingdom.
Okay.
In the human kingdom, it's a very different story.
Do tell.
Because it's not just physical things, trauma that can cause this, it's also emotional traumas. So sometimes people will have like PTSD, that type of thing, or any kind of emotional trauma, and it will switch them, and they'll remain switched for years. And those are the people who get confused with turning right or left. Or I tell them to lay on their stomach and they go on their back. Or they get confused, they say knee instead of elbow. So they're confused with top and bottom, front to back, or right to left. And so when you're switched like that, you can't use the muscle testing. So there's a number of people out there who maybe have tried to muscle test themselves, and they say it doesn't work because they're switched. If you're switched, it will not work. So that's the first thing you need to know is if you're going to do any muscle testing, you want to make sure that you're not switched. And I teach that in the 1 day.
Okay.
As well as the 3 day.
Wow.
And so that makes a big difference. Once you're not switched, then you can trust your muscle test.
Okay.
So, and you start with simple statements like I was doing with you. I'm a man, I'm a woman, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 5, and then you see what your body does, right?
Right.
And if your computer is working, that's what I call it, if your computer is working, then you will be strong on the things that you're congruent with, and you'll be weak on the things you're incongruent with. Once you have that, then you can use that to create sentences and then test different things.
Wow.
Yeah, whether it's an okay statement or a belief statement. So that's how it works. And then as far as how to clear these things when you find a problem, I teach that as well.
Okay. Very interesting. And this is all within this methodology, within this immersion day of training that you do for people. Really interesting. I'd love for you to add on. I have a few questions or thoughts, but if there's anything else around this particular immersion day that you can think of, what else people might be experiencing. I mean, that's a tremendous amount, but there's anything that you feel called to describe further?
Yeah. So another thing that I do in that 1 day is I explain the concept of love blueprint.
Okay, yes.
Okay. And how that affects us and how we can figure out what our subconscious love blueprint is. And then the parts that we don't like, we can change. Like, for example, I had one of my blueprint was love and life means being criticized. And I realized that came from my mom. My mom was very critical. Yeah. So I believe that that's what love is. If somebody loves me, they should criticize me. And so even though consciously I didn't like it, subconsciously it felt like love. And the thing is, whatever you believe, you're right. So if you really believe that and you need that to feel loved, then you will talk and act in ways that will get you criticized. Because then you feel loved.
Yeah.
You see?
Very
and
interesting.
So, and conversely, once you change that belief completely, you get rid of that and you put in instead, which is what I teach, is like you remove a belief and then you put a new one in. And the new one in would be, I can allow myself to believe that love and life means being accepted as I am. Right? And then so you make sure that you're congruent when you test that afterward. And once you do that, you'll stop talking and acting in ways that are going to get you criticized. So you'll have a lot less criticism. Do you see?
That sounds lovely and refreshing. Yes, for anyone who's holding those patterns. And
Exactly.
that's not solely unique to one person. There's so many people that are holding these, what I think could be called conditionings.
Absolutely.
Right? And even subconscious conditionings. So one, your practice helps people identify what are these narratives and storylines that are so baked in our minds.
Yes.
That we've been carrying perhaps since we were such young children. We don't even remember the beginning of these truths, quote unquote, because they're not true. But you're right. If you believe it's true, then it is.
Exactly.
And to one, identify, two, kind of, I'll call either unplug or untangle, turn off, deprogram. And then three is, okay, so what's a healthy pattern?
Exactly.
What's a healthy narrative? And this is not easy peasy breezy little work here. I mean, there's some deep, heartfelt digging that people do in your, I know, sessions and also these trainings, because it unearths, for people who are ready to do the work or do the next level of work. I think anyone who's coming to our retreat has been doing work on themselves in many forms, probably for many, many years. And I think, let me know if this is a fair statement, wherever you are in your self-work journey, you've been able to take people a level deeper if they're willing to go there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I'll add a little funny thing just to make fun of myself a little bit. But I'd heard so many wonderful things about your sessions. I was like, okay, I trust, she's going to be good. But I was kind of thinking, I've done so much therapy already, and I'm such a spiritual yogi, and I have all these meditation practices, and it's been over a decade of my journey. What can possibly be that unearthed? And oh my gosh, there was so much that I had. And I think I was almost entertained by like the level of profoundness. And most of it wasn't new news to me, but it was some childhood stuff and divorce stuff. And that stuff was like, okay, cool. I worked with a different therapist many years ago, but I was ready to go a layer deeper and see some more subconscious patterns, at that. And I think people, I think everyone would go through layers of that with you.
Yeah, and the main difference that I see is that when you go to regular therapy, it's a talking therapy, right? Yeah. So it's all in the mind. It's all about like trying to figure this out in your mind and trying to let it go in your mind. But I'm sure you've experienced this, that if somebody hurts you and you can't forgive them, you feel it not just up here, you feel it in your body. You have a physiology that happens when you think about this person. You still feel the anger, you still feel the stress, you still feel the betrayal and the sadness and all that, right? And so with this approach, you literally diffuse all of that. It's a body-mind technique. So it's not just the mind willing to do something. We actually remove it from the body, from the meridian system, from the nervous system, from the cellular memory by doing this work.
Yep.
And so that's why you actually feel the difference in your body. And sometimes when we do a session with people, they feel exhausted physically from clearing this thing, and all they had to do is tap some points or hold some meridian points, right? And they feel exhausted because the whole body is just letting go, and they finally get out of that sympathetic mode and go into a parasympathetic mode, which makes them want to just rest.
Absolutely. Budget a lot of rest time after your session with Dr. Teshna. I should put a little disclaimer warning. It like buzzes on the screen right now. Yeah. And I'm being playful in my saying that, but I'm so serious. The amount of water I drank, I slept like a rock. Didn't have any kind of troubled sleep or nightmares. And the next day, I wasn't exhausted in a negative, sad, depressed way, but just felt like maybe I'd run a marathon or something, and
it can take a lot out of you to finally let go of these things you've been holding on to for so long. But then after that, you feel so much better. You feel lighter, you feel freer.
Right.
And when you think about those things, you don't have the charge on it anymore. Yeah. You can't work yourself up on those things anymore.
Without the charge. And that's interesting. So many things. And I want to reiterate what you're saying, and correct me if I'm using the wrong vocabulary, but I've always found very interesting is this psychosomatic work where our body, my kind of layman's vocabulary would be every cell in our body has memory and is holding on to something.
Exactly.
At a quantum level, at a spiritual level, and I'm talking my yogi spiritual lingo now, and I fully believe this. And when my intellectual brain can't understand what's in my cells, what they're holding on to, and to have that kind of release with the work that you do, that's where the exhaustion comes from. It's like finally after that marathon, you get to sit down. Whew, I'm not in fight or flight mode, in some kind of like low burn fight or flight. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like I was just gonna give an example of someone who took my training
Okay.
number of years ago, and she lives here, and she has a beautiful voice, Lily. You think you know
I
her,
do.
right? The
Yes,
Russian,
I
woman.
do.
She has an incredible voice, and she took my training like I don't know 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't even know that, but she always wanted to be a musician and a singer in public. But every time she tried to sing, no sound would come out.
Wow.
And so she couldn't do it. And after she took my training,
Okay.
she used the technique that I teach in there to get rid of phobias and stress and PTSD and addictions and all that stuff. And she cleared herself of that. And a few months later, she was singing all over the village.
That's incredible.
And that's because she took that training.
Wow.
And she was able to clear herself. And I didn't even know that for a number of years until I think a year ago, and I went to one of her concerts because I wouldn't miss them. I love her voice. And after the concert, I was leaving, and she ran after me. She said, Dr. Teshna, Dr. Teshna. I said, what? She says, I never told you, but the reason I've been able to sing is because of the technique you taught me.
Gosh.
And I was like, oh my God, it brought me to tears.
I have goosebumps. That's so moving.
Yes, because I mean, it's like, who's to tell? Like, she might never have been able to get that voice out there, and it would have been such a loss for humanity, for us, And it's like, there's just no telling. Like, once you learn these techniques, you can actually help yourself and others in ways that you have no idea you can. And it's very quick. Doesn't take months.
Right.
So
I want to reiterate that's what I meant by gift that you have, and many other people and practitioners, and I have gifts, through my various things. But for you to give your gift to somebody like that, and then she's giving her gift out to the world, this is the domino effect that we have in each other's lives. I mean, this is the beautiful cosmic spider web of how we're all interconnected. And we'll speak a bit about the Vilcabamba, magic and connection and synchronicity that happens here. And your gift is also your profession. This is your full job for 4 decades, and your trainings that you do. So you are offering what I would call your dharmic path through your profession. And now I have goosebumps about, there's a reason why you're doing what you do.
absolutely.
And you followed your calling
Yes.
to do this.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yeah, and so at the retreat, I'm going to be offering also one-on-one sessions so that people can experience, like for example, the applied kinesiology part, where I muscle test all the main muscles of the body, and then surprise, surprise, a bunch of them aren't working, right? Yeah. Even though you may not have pain anywhere or anything, that doesn't mean that everything is connected. And by using the muscle testing of the whole entire body, you find the ones that are not working. And if they're not working, then I make them work using meridian access point and areas of the spine that I use an instrument with to adjust the spine.
Yes.
And it works really instantly, basically, right? Something is weak, I touch the point, it's strong, I go in the spine, I adjust the areas that have to do with that, release everything, test the muscle, it's strong. It's literally seconds. So it's just like a breaker system in your house, right? If you put too many plugs in an outlet, the breaker's going to go off, right? And if you don't go into the breaker box to turn the breaker back on, that plug will never work again. And it's kind of like that in the body, right? Like, see, these muscles get turned off, and that's why you have back pain, or you have hip pain, or you have knee pain, or ankle pain, or whatever. It's because something is not connecting properly. And then once you reconnect it, the body can heal itself, and it feels much better.
Absolutely.
So
I'm so glad you added on those details about the one-on-one sessions, and I'm a bit smiling. I'm sure you can feel me smiling, because if I didn't have this session with you, I would not have been quite able to wrap my head around how fast it could actually be. And that's the part that I didn't have any prior experience with. Again, my kinesiology experience is different and using my spiritual practice, but the physical body, and again, doctor of chiropractic, as in the MD, as in the Western system and trained, and the Meridian system, which is, I believe, ancient and Eastern, in orientation. The emotional tapping, very psychiatric and mental emotional, clearing. I feel from you this blend of those modalities, bringing a wholeness to people, because we can't just go into different parts of the body and heal isolated slices. So all people who have like, oh, this lower back pain, and they go see a massage therapist and they see the physical therapist and all the things. That's great. But chances are you have emotional, mental stress, triggers, traumas, lots of things. And it's not just, oh yeah, the slip disc that's out. There's something that's causing that pain that can't just be fixed with massage and exercises. And so I feel that you bridge both these like physical and mental emotional worlds really nicely, and it's because you're treating the whole person that these shifts happen so quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then with the technique, actually, I can basically find out from the body whether or not there's an emotional component to a physical issue.
Yeah.
And I would say that 90% of the time, maybe more, there is an emotional component to a physical issue. For example, somebody has pain in their neck. I literally ask them, who is the pain in the neck in your life? Not where is the pain? It's like, who is the pain in the neck? Because we are very literal that way, you know? And then the other thing that I offer, obviously, is the MTT/NET blend that I do when I do it, which addresses all the emotional aspect of things. And then I also do Quantum Neurology, which is a whole other technique that was developed by George Gonzalez, who's also a chiropractor in California. And it's an amazing technique. And I use, there's a lot to that technique, but the one that I use and will offer at the retreat is something where we test the function of each of the cranial nerves. Remember when I did that with you? Like I had you smell something?
Yes.
To stimulate the olfactory nerve and then test the muscle. And if it goes weak, then I use light. I use red light and infrared light to reset the nervous system so that now that nerve is going to work better. And so, and there's 12 major cranial nerves, of which the vagus nerve, which a lot of people know about, which has to do with rest, digest, and heal. And when that's not working right, it's hard to sleep, it's hard to digest, it's hard to heal. And it makes a huge difference when you just turn these things back on. It's like, wow, you know. So
Absolutely, and you're reminding me, I just was thinking there's so many folks who I know or I've worked with in the past where there's some kind of gut problem that's going on, you know, the elimination diet and, you know, the grains, or there's a gluten or no gluten. Yes, all that's important, but so often, you know, the gut is the second brain, and emotional, mental triggers will deeply affect how our entire process. And I liked your metaphor about kind of if there's either plugging and replugging, because we get short-circuited. That's how I describe it.
Literally.
We get short-circuited, and you come and you're like, oh, whoop, look at that plug fell out. Let me pop that back in, and then muscle test and see, okay, you now have a better alignment. And I feel, my opinion is that there's not a single practitioner or healer or doctor or anybody, a shaman out there that can fix people. You're not healing and fixing them, because we all have to be self-responsible for our own journey and continued work, but you're setting people up for greater success with greater ease as they're on their healing journey and their wellness
like
journey.
reconnecting everything so the body can heal itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to segue on this note, because this work is fascinating, and I'm sure those who are listening, my guess is, haven't quite heard this combination of modalities, because this is unique to your methodology, right? Which is quite, again, internationally well known, very much respected. People are trained in it. And as I had mentioned before, there are some famous people who have flown you around the world, not to steal stories or give too much of a teaser, but when I heard these things, I thought, you kidding? Seriously? And I think I only know one or two of the stories. I know there's many. And if it's fun to share, I think it's also part of your personal journey as you are developing these techniques. You know, it's not just about, oh, because a famous person likes something, well, then it has to be good. But I'd love for you to share from your experience, like, what was it that you were offering, and what was infecting or impacting some of these people who are quite well known, to motivate them to keep pursuing this with you? Like there was a real specialness happening.
Yes. So the one that she's talking about is that when I was in West Stockbridge, Massachusetts, because I have a practice in Philmont, New York, in upstate New York, near Hudson, New York, but I also had a practice in West Stockbridge, Massachusetts, which is right next to Tanglewood and Lenox and Stockbridge area.
Beautiful area.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. Yeah. So I had a practice there for like 10 years, and while I was there, I was working on a lot of people that were from that area, including a massage therapist who happened to work at Canyon Ranch.
Yes.
So Canyon Ranch is like a retreat health spa for
Beautiful, quite upscale. Yes, very
really
nice.
upscale,
Yeah.
where people that are very famous go to. And it just so happened that Yoko Ono was at Canyon Ranch, and she was being worked on by this particular massage therapist who happened to be a patient of mine.
Yes.
And Yoko asked the person if she knew a good chiropractor that would be willing to come to her to adjust her, because she really needed it. And so the person that was my patient, she said, "Oh yeah, I know a really good one, Dr. Teshna, right in West Stockbridge." She says, "Well, do you think she would come to Canyon Ranch to work on me?" She says, "I don't know. I'll call her and ask her." So she calls me, and of course I said yes. So I went to Canyon Ranch and I worked on her. And at first she was kind of like distant, like she's used to having people serve her and kowtow to her and all that. And I wasn't like that. I was just testing and seeing what was weak and adjusting her and all that. And all of a sudden she's like, she woke up, like when she realized what I was doing, and then like this was weak, and all of a sudden it was strong, like it got her attention. And all of a sudden she says, "Would you adjust my boyfriend?" And so then I adjusted her boyfriend. And then she asked me if I would come back the next day. So I literally went there every day that she was at Canyon Ranch and worked on her. And she got more and more like enthused. And she was leaving after, I can't remember how long she was there, maybe a couple of weeks. And then she was leaving back for the city, which is where she lived. And so she asked me
In New York City?
In New York
Right,
City,
yeah.
yeah. So she asked me if I'd be willing to go down to the city to work on her. And I'm like, okay, I'm game, I'll do it, So I started going there like every weekend and working on her and her son and her boyfriend. And
roughly what years was this, or year was this
that
approximately?
was like, I want to say 1990, something like
Wow,
that.
okay.
Yeah, it was a long
Okay.
time ago. And so anyway, so I worked on her and she loved it. And then she asked me if I would be willing to go to Japan to work on her mother, because her mother had had a stroke 2 years prior. And in Japan, apparently they don't do anything for stroke patients. They just let them be, right? And so her mother was really debilitated. She could barely walk. She had that walker, and she would just go like a millimeter at a time with the feet, like this. And so she asked me if I'd be willing to go over there, if I thought I could help her mom. And I said, yeah, I think I could. So she flew me over to Japan, to Tokyo.
This is the opposite side of the planet. So just as a reminder, you're in New York, this is where all this is happening, and you're going to the other side of the planet. She flew you over there because it was that important to her.
Yeah.
And she felt in her body, I don't know this from speaking to her, but my feeling is now, how powerful this methodology is, that you had to offer people this gift. So please continue. You go to Japan. Okay.
So I go to Japan. She flies me there in business class and everything. And I get there, and her brother and wife picked me up at the airport and brought me to this beautiful hotel where there was orchids on the table and fruit plate on the desk and everything. And it was really wonderful. And I said, okay, so can I go see your mom right now? And they're like, now? Because I just landed, right? I don't remember. It was like maybe like in the midday or something, and they expected me to want to rest for the rest of the day. I'm like, no. I want to get started now.
I'm here to work.
Exactly. I'm here to work. I want to help this person, right? So I had brought my adjusting table, and so they
You brought your table with you from New York?
Yeah, portable adjusting table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
it's like a smaller size massage table kind of thing.
Okay.
So I brought that with me. And so we go there, and she introduced me to her and everything. And apparently she had been very reluctant to have anyone work on her. Anyone. But somehow she trusted Yoko that somehow I might be able to help. So the first time she couldn't even get on the table. We had to literally lift her and put her on the table. Yeah. And then I started working on her, and I told her I wanted to see her again later that evening. Okay. So I let her some time to rest in between. I literally work on her twice a day the whole time I was there. So the next day when I got there, she had a big smile on her face already, and she was, instead of advancing by 1 millimeter each step, she was doing 2 inches each step. This is just
Which is about 10x. I mean, that's
exactly.
And it seems so
exactly.
small, but that's
For
a
her,
10
it was
times
huge.
improvement.
It was huge, exactly. So then I worked on her again twice, every single day. And every single day, the next day when I come, she'd be better and better until she was walking without her walker.
That's incredible.
She went down the hallway and she was having her hands like this, like to put in case she might like fall or something, but she didn't. And she came all the way to the table and lay down on the table on herself. By herself.
When she wasn't even able to get on the table at all.
Exactly.
You had to lift her up. Over approximately what time period was
It was a
this?
2-week period that I was there.
When I first heard this story, I thought you were going to say you were there for a year.
No.
I thought you were going to say, like, okay, so you moved to Japan temporarily because I couldn't imagine. And this is like, I'm exposed to a lot of healing and modalities and stuff, and this sounds next level to me of how quick that progress really was.
Yes.
And I know there's more to the story, so please continue.
Yes. So the funny thing is when I first got there, I could tell that the brother of Chiyoko and his wife were very skeptical. And they just thought, it's just another one of those crazy Chiyoko idea and it's not going to do anything.
Those hippies.
We're just entertaining her, but we don't believe that's going to do anything. But after the second day and they saw the change in their mother, they both said, would you please work on us too? So I ended up working on the whole family, him and his wife and their daughter. And they were really happy with what happened, for them. And they felt so much better in every way. And at some point, I think after I was there for like 8 days, they wanted me to take a break and go to Kyoto. So their daughter took me to Kyoto, and we spent 2 or 3 days there. And in this Japanese traditional inn, with the tatamis to sleep on and the low tables and these incredible little tiny dishes of a little bit of everything. Yes. And I'm vegetarian, so everything was vegetarian, but they had all these beautiful little dishes, and then there was the hot springs in there and the massage and the whole thing. It was really amazing.
It's
so
wonderful.
I loved it. Yes.
And was this a bit of the thank you and appreciation and treat and reward and Japanese culture? I'm half Japanese, so I'm quite familiar. I was born in the United States, but I just know the reciprocity and the thanks, and it's with such deep reverence. The Japanese culture has this thing with the receiving and giving of gifts, and I can only imagine the gift that you were able to give to their mother and to them and experience that. And I've also been to Kyoto once, and I know where you were, and just that the beauty of what's there. And I'm so glad you're able to experience that too, and well deserved.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then we went in the bullet train. That was the first time I ever did a bullet train too. That was pretty amazing. So I loved it, And so by the time I was supposed to leave, the mother said, "Can you stay longer?" She wanted me to stay another couple of weeks, and I said, "Well, I really can't because I have a whole bunch of patients that are waiting for me back home that also need me, And so then I went back home. But by the end that I left, she was walking without her walker. She was able to sit on her own and get back up, things that she hadn't been able to do for 2 years.
And so I know this is just one example of one person who happens to be in a famous family and kind of removing the famous I, because that is such an enjoyable part of the story, because everybody, I think, knows who Yoko Ono is, right? But with this mother, and I don't anticipate on this October retreat that we're having people that are in that debilitated of a state will be coming. Definitely not. But I am curious if we can just go a level deeper. What would you assess you were doing for her? What were you rewiring and reconnecting, kind of like the plug metaphor of some of her brain and body ability? Because if she had enough muscle strength to eventually get on the table, it's not like she built that strength in 2 weeks.
No, it's a connection issue.
Okay, maybe for this one example, because you were speaking about it, I'd love to just go a step further.
Yes.
What did you do for her?
So basically what I did is I muscle tested everything, all her leg muscles and trunk muscles, arms, everything. And she had, most of it was turned off. Most of it was turned off. In other words, when you have a stroke, it's kind of like taking the main breaker in your house and turning it off. Everything goes off. Right, everything goes off, right? So everything went off, so to speak. So it's really hard to walk. It's really hard to do anything when your brain isn't connecting properly to your muscles, right? Yeah. And so that's the first thing I did, as I reconnected everything, right? So now all of a sudden she was able to hold this and able to hold that. So that's why it made such a difference so quickly, right? All I did is turn the breakers back on.
Wow.
Right? Turns the breakers back on, and it's in the body, it's a little bit, it's not so much like an on-off switch, it's more like a dimmer switch. That's how I like to explain it. Yeah. So like it should be at a 10, okay? But when I first tested her, she was like a 2 or a 1, right? And after I worked on her the first time, she was at least a 6 because she could hold it. And then the second time I worked on her, then she went to a 7 and an 8 and a 9, and until she was like more like a 10, like she could feel the strength in there. Do you see? And she had the connection, and now she had the connection. The brain could say, okay, bring quadricep, contract, flex the leg and bring it forward. Do you see what I mean? And so all the wiring is there, the muscles are there, but the connection between the two wasn't there. And that's what I find, right? So then once I reestablish the connection, then the brain can connect and it can start to work and can start to heal.
Yeah.
You know, so like I've worked with people who had like ulcers, like diabetes, you know, like they have ulcers in their ankles and feet and stuff that never heal because they have neuropathy, right? That means the nerves are connecting, right? But I was actually able to help a number of people who had this problem by reconnecting the area of the body back to the brain. And all of a sudden the ulcers start to heal.
Yeah.
They hadn't healed in years. So it's about connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And just a kind of maybe a final kind of rounding out thought based on all of that. It's really, once again, landing with me how people who are suffering from a chronic pain, a chronic illness, a specific incident like a stroke and ulcers, which seems so like medically prominently defined, physical, there's just an equal amount of importance of the reconnection when it comes to emotional trauma, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like both of them, they're not the same, but you see what I'm getting at? It's like this work applies to both. And some people are like, oh, I have real pain. I was in a car accident back when. Well, there could also still be emotional things that are exacerbating, yes, that reconstructive surgery that you had that's never quite healed all the way.
Exactly.
Because there's emotional crap that's built up in us. Yep. And so I think you're sort of, I'd say the rewiring doctor here, Dr. Teshna of rewiring.
Yes.
And working with people through all of that. That's amazing. Well, I feel so fulfilled with all of this, the storytelling and the details and explanation of your work. The training for the retreat that's coming up in October, the one-on-one sessions. I'd love to move into some conversation around Vilcabamba specifically, but before we do that, just give a moment for any last thoughts or things you want to add about either the sessions that you do or the training that we haven't touched upon. To me, it feels like there's a lot of amazing information, but feel free to add anything if you want to.
So basically when I do the sessions with people, like I give them the choice, you know, so people can choose, like if they just want to do the applied kinesiology part, you know, like the physical part, or if they want to also do the emotional part, or if they also want to have their cranial nerves checked.
Yes.
Right? So people can choose and like as they wish, you know, but if you're going to come to the retreat, I would suggest you do all three, because only here in Vilcabamba will you ever be able to get all three done by the same practitioner.
It is true. And this is how, to add a bit about the retreat, how we're setting up is those who come. This is what Abundant Living is doing, is we're helping somewhat concierge appointments with you, other practitioners, and we're being very mindful to help people on their journey. So we will either stack sessions with you or have extended sessions and give the right amount of space, or sometimes space isn't needed between your sessions with people.
Yeah.
And this is one of the gifts that this retreat is offering, because if you just come here to Vilcabamba and don't know every single practitioner, don't have their phone number in your phone to WhatsApp them for appointments, you would have no way of knowing who's who, you know, what they're all about. And so we actually have professionals aligned to like health coaching that they're going to help each of the retreat attendees figure out, all right, what's the right people to see and in what order, and kind of help them understand like the journey that they can be on here. So all of them, I'll call it the full offering, the package deal for Teshna.
Exactly. Yeah, this health retreat is such a great idea, because there's so many amazing practitioners in this town, you know, and this gives you like an array of choices of all these different things.
Yeah, it's like a menu.
It is. It's like a menu, exactly.
We keep joking, us at Abundant Living, and Brandon and Jesse and Carl, the guys you see on these videos all the time, we're like, we really have to figure out how we're going to attend our own retreat this time. Like, how are we going to logistically run it and attend the workshops and do this and that and go get the sessions? But we're very lucky to live here, and this is why I have access to you. I live 10 minutes from you, and this is what we have access to. So
Exactly.
On that note, but about living in Vilcabamba, right? And kind of orienting around people who are watching this video. There's a lot of fans of this YouTube channel for years and years, and people appreciate kind of the authentic, sort of real deal talk about what it's like to live here. And folks watching often want to move down to Vilcabamba or maybe buy a second home and make the transition. Or even for this retreat, if you come to the health retreat, you don't even have to consider moving here. Maybe they just want to understand what is so special about Vilcabamba, and maybe you can answer that in the orientation of health and wellness. It is called the Valley of Longevity. It's an unofficial blue zone. Da-da-da-da-da. I'll let you take it from here. What is so special about Vilcabamba from a health lens for you?
Well, I mean, you could start with the basics, just the idea that you can be outdoors all year round.
Yes.
You have sunlight, you have fresh air, you have really good water coming from Podocarpus Park. So you have like the basics, even the food. I mean, like every day we're like, oh my God, we're so lucky. Like we can get like the best foods like every day, like fresh picked avocados and fresh picked lettuce and oranges and lemons and you name it, papayas. And, it's kind of like everything is available so easily, and things that are, really expensive in the US, like getting mangoes or avocados, it's like here, it's so inexpensive. It's like 50 cents for an avocado. I was just talking to my son the other day. He says it's, I think, like $2.50 or $3 an avocado in the US.
Don't get me started on organic egg prices
Exactly.
in the US.
So
I read some headlines and I was... Yeah.
Exactly. So here, because we have so many like-minded people, we even have like an organic market where the people who grow organic produce get together and sell it to each other, right? So we know the people who are growing the food. It's so different than going to the supermarket, and especially nowadays with all the craziness that's going on, God knows what is in that food anymore. Yeah. So at least here we know who's growing it, and we know they're not adding anything in there we don't want. So just that alone is huge, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I really love, and I think is also part of being healthy, is community.
Tell me a bit about that. What community means to you in Vilcabamba?
Yeah, so community to me means that we have a lot of people that are like-minded, that are into freedom and health and longevity and wanting to just be who they are, not have to pretend, and also not to have to work like constantly. Just be able to take time off and go have lunch with your friends or dinner or breakfast or something. Like, I never did that in the US.
Yeah.
But here, it's like it happens every week, It's just so, like, for example, there's a men's group. So my husband is going, and they get together every Sunday morning for breakfast.
I didn't know that. I love it.
And every Wednesday afternoon for lunch, so they get together. So when we were in the US, he really didn't have many friends at all, and if he did, they never got together. But here it's at least twice a week they're getting together, every single week, and it's so different, and just the fact that the pace of life is much slower, it just gets you out of that rat race. The only reason that we're busy here is because there's so many interesting things to do. It's like how many workshops are you going to take? Yoga classes, meditation. Are you going to go to acupuncture, chiropractic, naturopath? Are you going to get the Ayurvedic massages or the or the polarity or whatever? Yeah, that's what we're busy with. It's like all the fun stuff.
It's so true, and you're imitating almost real life, like a real life conversation I just had recently. And I said to a friend, I go, am I stressed out by all the good opportunity that I have in my life right now? I just have to pause myself, because I was feeling a bit like, oh, I really want to do this, but then I'm going to miss that. And it's all accessible and it's all super easy.
Exactly.
It's different strokes for different folks. Like, not everyone's going to be into not everyone's going to go to kirtan, right? Which is the Sanskrit chanting, singing mantra, very Hindu, Indian, reverent to my heart, deep to my yoga practice. There's an amazing kirtan leader, practitioner. And it's not for everybody, but that's my jam, and I like doing that. And then there's other things. So there's a wide variety of activity for sure.
Absolutely. It's like you really, almost every day you have to decide between 2 or 3 things, that you could do. And you're like, I wish I could do this and this, but you can't. You have to choose one of the 2. But it's all like fun stuff.
Absolutely.
So.
And I think something you touched upon is something brought to mind, like just meaningful conversation that's had here,
Yes.
people. And I think you said either freedom or the word sovereignty come to my mind. There is a lot of people, again, we're not all a homogenous mindset here. We're actually quite different characters.
Yes.
There's a wide variety of colorful cast of characters, I like to call it, all the time. And there's a harmony, and there's also people who have differences of opinions, which I think is cool. I think you actually need difference of opinion to keep us sharp, keep us educated, seeing things from different perspectives. That's what world peace is really all about. It's how to respect and appreciate our differences. In Vilcabamba, and I'm wondering what, your husband and the men's group, I'm like, oh, it's the sweetest thing. I love it. I am so sure there's no shortage of just fascinating conversation happening. These are not average Joes, no offense to the average Joe, but I'm just saying we are all not average Joes and Janes down here in Vilcabamba. Right. And you walk into a shop, and I've heard people, what they're talking about, it could be anything from like the deepest Ayurvedic astrology reading session that they had to the quantum physics of what, the solar moon is showing. And I'm like, wait, what is going on here? To the organic farming Minga that's being held, which is a community volunteer day to help a farm, maybe raise fences or something like that. All in one coffee shop. These are all the conversations that are alive. Exactly. And I think that's a lot about the personalities that are attracted here.
Yeah. The other thing that's very unique about Vilcabamba, I think that we can find stuff here that you wouldn't find anywhere else in Ecuador. Like, for example, Himalayan sea salt, like Epsom salt, like ghee, like 4 different types of ghee in 4 different stores. Like, you would not find that in anywhere else. I don't think you can find it in Loja. I don't think you can find it in Quito. There's all kinds of supplements available now here in various places, all this organic food. It's just amazing, because the people are here that are wanting it, the merchants are finding it and bringing it to us. Yes. So it's like we have it all. It's just amazing.
I saw Trader Joe's nutritional yeast at Juice Factory the other day.
There you go.
I was like, I did a double take at the shelf. I picked up, Trader Joe's? And my friend, this is many, many months ago, she goes, there's no Trader Joe's here. I'm like, I know. And I was like, where did this come from? They figure out how to cater to, and this is a very basic economic principle. Like we've moved the market because there's supply and demand.
Exactly.
And even going back to the organic farmers market, I didn't know this. You probably did because you've been here many years longer than me. It was expats, extranjeros, a lot Canada, and Europe and United States who were so holistically minded, organic food minded that because of the demand, I think it was Zia who was actually telling me, a very well-known person supporting all local agriculture, education about soil health and plant health. I believe it was her that was telling me it was the extranjero influence that actually made the organic market happen. It didn't exist before.
No.
It wasn't a thing, and then the community rallied, and there's people who go to these farms and they check and they speak to the farmers and they see, okay, what are their pesticides? How are these chickens being treated? And so it's a community generated event, and it's like the most popular event. It's the hot spot.
Everybody's there, absolutely. Like, I would miss it for
spot.
anything. Every Saturday morning. From I think it starts at 7 in the morning.
So. I'm never there at 7, but I'm like an 8:15. I'm an 8:15 arrival.
I'm retired, supposedly, right? I'm not gonna get up at 6 to get there at 7. But I think it started at 7. It goes to like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. I'm
also never there late. I'm like an 8:15 to 9:15 window.
Yeah, exactly. Mine is like from 9 to 10 about. And so everybody's got their window, and then you go there and you meet everybody. It's like a social event. I mean, you have to plan way more time than just buying your food, because you're talking with the merchants, you're talking with the people who are there, and it's like we look forward to it. It's like a highlight of our week.
I'm so glad I'm not alone in feeling like that.
Are you kidding?
Oh, I know this. I know there's so many people who say that, and I had this moment where I was thinking, I'm so glad. And it's not that I don't go out to dinner and don't enjoy a glass of wine with a friend, but I feel this is such a big part of my social scene right now. And there's some people, maybe I'll make this my last little note here, is there's some people who for 10 months that I've been here, I only have seen, I swear this is true, at the farmer's market during my kind of usual normal window. And we have such a sweet little friendship, a little buddy bond, a little chatty, this and that. I know about their family, they know about my journey. And I get to see them in town because we just sort of have different patterns, but I see them every market. I'm like, if I didn't go, I wouldn't know these amazing people. So it's a super, super great thing. And I think these are some real fun highlights of the Vilcabamba energy. It's all about energy, as you know. It's all about energy. And people who come down to visit on the retreat or any other time, like this is the kind of stuff that you can authentically look forward to. So thank you for sharing that about some of your favorite Vilca inspirations and enjoyments that you have here.
And I think that's part of the health thing, is to have a social life, that's enriching and that's fun.
It's food for the soul.
Exactly.
It's food for the soul.
It's like
Absolutely.
no one needs to be alone here.
No.
All you have to do is go sit at the juice factory, and you're gonna be meeting like 50 people if you stay there for a couple hours.
Absolutely. I really do look at it like a movie set sometimes. I'm like, all right, the cast of characters. I'm like, stage left. Like, oh, there comes Bruno and Alea. They're coming this way. Oh, there's Teshna. Hi, and everyone just kind of walks through, and
exactly.
It makes our heart chakra, I think, strong to have that kind of connection.
There's another thing I want to say is that
please do.
For me, and I've heard lots of people saying the same thing. If I think of someone that I want to meet and I'm walking in town, I'm going to meet them. Yeah. It's almost every time.
Wow.
And like, for example, there's so much magic going on here all the time. Like, for example, somebody will cancel their appointment with me at the last minute. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool, fine. I'm already there. So that day I just go outside of the door or where I was, and this man comes up and he says, oh, hi, Dr. Teshna. I says, hi. He says, I've been trying to reach you to make an appointment. I said, really? I said, well, I just happened to have a cancellation. You could come right now. And he says, really? That would be great. So here it happens all the time. If somebody cancels, somebody shows up. And in this case, I was already there. He just shows up at the door.
Yep.
Right? And then if somebody really needs a time and I don't have any time, somebody cancels so I can fit them in. I mean, it just goes like this every time that I schedule anybody. It's always like that.
I feel, as I said before, you live your life in flow and kind of connected. I know you sense the currents and you have this nice refined ability to go with it. My sense is that it's amplified in Vilcabamba.
It's definitely amplified.
It's amplified, all of this.
There's so much serendipity going on here.
I agree.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
As I'm looking at you, I know we're both thinking like, oh yes, there's lots happening.
Yes.
Lots happening.
Yes. A lot of magic.
Thank you for all that. I love rounding things out on the note of magic because it's real, and we're all having this adventure called life, this adventure called being human. And I lean into magic because it's the specialness of what makes life extra vibrant. Is this a bit of a mystery? So we're playing with a mystery here. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add or share? How can people find out more about your work?
Well, I have a website, which is drteshna.com, drteshna.com. I also teach a 3-day event. And so if you were interested, you could go on the website and contact me via that, and then I can give you the information. I do 1-day MTT immersion every month. So like my next one is June 24th, and then I have one on July 15, and so on. And that's all listed on the website I would give you if you were interested in that. And the next 3-day intensive is going to be on July 28th, 29th, 30th.
Okay. And these are all international online that you're teaching, yes, which is
so,
important to note. So everybody
can join.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I only teach it 4 times a year, the 3-day.
Okay.
And so I have one in July and one in November 17th to 19th.
Wonderful.
I'm retired, so I'm not working too hard.
You crack me up, I swear. It's just like, and I'll make the comment, this is such a cheesy joke to make, it's so typical, but when I'm retired, I hope I have as much energy as you. Okay, maybe this will be our final note. I keep thinking we're going to wrap it up. When we were speaking one other time, I was saying, oh, well, how many sessions can you possibly do in a day? Dr. Teshna, I want to make sure that you have time to rest and you have energy, and maybe a couple in the morning, a couple in the afternoon, thinking about for the retreat. And well, I'll let you answer that. What's your real maximum that you can do?
I said, you put them in there, I'll see them from 8 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. Doesn't bother me.
So she's retired, as you can tell from that. What?
Yeah, so to see the difference between retired and working is that when you're retired, you don't have to work.
No.
You choose to
Yeah.
work. So of course I don't work every day. I
Mm-hmm.
just work whenever I feel like it. So I have like a loose schedule of most of the time Tuesdays and Saturdays, but not every Tuesday and Saturday,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's just the afternoon or just the morning or whatever. But I try to make myself available at least once a week so that people
Yes.
that need it can see me. And but then I also see some people at my house, and
Right,
you know,
right.
and I do online work.
And,
but
and
it's-
other retreats. So we were been speaking
Yeah.
for other in-person
Yeah.
retreats, not abundant living related, but other things. And
Yeah.
and you show up, and my sense is this is actually a great thing to share with people. I'm sure they get this already, but you're not someone who's doing things because you're obligated to, or you
No.
feel like you have to, or you're
No,
doing it
I
just
really
for the
feel-
money.
No,
It's
I-
the opposite.
Exactly.
Of
I
all of
really
that.
feel like it's my mission.
Exactly. This is your dharma.
It's my dharma, and I
Uh-huh.
actually love doing what I do.
I know.
You know, so it's like, so you know, my husband is retired from his engineering work, and he's very happy to be retired. But I tell him, I say, you know what? I'll never retire completely. I'll never stop adjusting people or doing MTT or NET or doing, you know, all the stuff that I do. I'll never stop teaching. I can see myself being 110 and still teaching my MTT trainings. By then, they might be a 4-day or a 5-day because I keep adding stuff. But I'm not
I can
planning
see
on
this too.
slowing down anytime
Yeah.
soon.
No, I 100% feel your authenticity in that. And I'm positive people watching this video can feel that too. So thank you for sharing this. And I'm so glad we took it this far because
Yeah,
this is part of your essence and energy. And there's only so much you can do in a YouTube video. And I'm glad we added this real vibrant energy that you have. It's genuine. From sitting next to Teshna and knowing her in person and community, it's very real. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'll remind our audience watching to once again like this video, hit the bell, and then also subscribe to the channel because this interview, this conversation was excellent, and we're going to have so many more. And I mean this so sincerely. It's an honor to know you and to be able to collaborate and work with you and call you a partner on this retreat.
Yeah,
So thank
and
you.
thank you for inviting me to be part of the retreat.
Absolutely.
I really look forward to that. It's
Yeah.
going to be fun. I'm always looking for having fun, right? So this is going to be fun.
We love her. We love her. All right. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Ciao.
Ciao.